Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the King's Podcast, and this is your host Eugene, aka GGGGG Money. On this segment, on this episode, we're going to talk about finances. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about government money. Usually, we talk about celebrity money, celebrity finances, tax issues, and individual, how people are doing on the ground financially. On this segment, I'm going to talk about our government and the money that our government is making, the issues that our government is dealing with, what we are facing as a country. I've already spoken about many things about our national budget, our tax issues. On this segment, I'm just going to open a document where I can relate to you how much money our government is making, where that money is coming from. And then from there, I'm going to pinpoint where I have already said that we have a tax issue. We don't collect enough taxes. Not because the percentages are small, because South Africa is one of the highest taxed countries where we tax our people and our businesses the most. It's not a percentage problem. It's not a percentage problem. It's a capacity problem. It's a systems problem. Our systems are broken. We don't collect enough taxes. And I will start with a controversial suggestion, to say that maybe we must come up with an idea. We must come up with an idea of how we can propose to collect more taxes. Let's look at the national budget, how much money we are making. It's going to be quick. I'm going to read it quickly. You're going to understand. So this is the national budget as it has been proposed and published by the National Treasury. It says that tax revenue of the country is about 2 trillion, 2.6 trillion. It's about 2 trillion and the 6 billion on top. And then about non-tax revenue, the revenue that is not related to tax is about 37.9 billion. And then you have main budget revenue, which is 1.97 billion. It is made up of tax revenue and non-tax revenue. So how much money does the government, provinces, social security funds, and public entities? This is the money on top of the tax, on top of the collection of taxes. You have 250 billion from the government. That this is money that they collect through public entities, your ESCOM, your many other, your Sanral and all these other entities that make money, your train stations, government transport buses, and all those things that are operated by the government. Everything under PRASA is government owned. Everything under ESCOM, government owned. Money that is made by these other entities, and also provinces and social. Provinces make money from the constituency, from the citizens. They pay for certain services. As a result, I wanted to highlight that one of the suggestions that I have, government collects about 250 billion, which is government money that they collect from public entities and provinces, local municipalities, and all of that. 250, that's a quarter of a trillion. If we can get that tax, I know many people are going to say, no, this money has been through the process, has been through the system, so it doesn't make sense to tax this money. If this money gets taxed, it gets submitted to SARS. It can grow the level of collection, but it's going to be counterintuitive to tax the government because the government is taxing us. If the government introduce a percentage of tax, I know it's not a popular opinion, it's not a popular point of view or a popular solution to say government must introduce VAT on local government stuff. Government must introduce other types of taxes on the money that they collect, and they should submit a percentage of that money to SARS. That's one point of view, because there's money that the government entities are making. Governmental entities like if ESCOM is supposed to compete with other companies, they are paying tax. Government must pay tax too. SARS must collect from ESCOM as they collect from other solar companies, private power producers, PPEs, private, power, PPIs, companies that produce power, companies that do solar energy. They pay VAT, they also pay tax to the government. Why don't ESCOM pay tax? Why don't other entities like your PRASA, why don't they pay companies tax also? These are entities, some of them are limited entities, which means they are publicly traded companies or public companies. Why don't they pay tax too? Maybe we can make more money if they pay tax. They will be more serious. They will know that when they do business, at the end of the day, the money that they make on the bottom line, they must submit some of that money to the government, and they must submit some of their income to the government too. They already do submit about 2.5 billion, 250 billion, a quarter of a trillion. They must also pay tax. There must also be tax introduced to these public entities, provinces, publicly benefiting entities and provinces and municipalities. They must be able to submit some of the tax, not just the income they collect, not just the water bills, the municipality garbage collection bill. No, they must also be able to pay tax as all other companies are paying tax. This way, I suggest that it will bring about the agency in running government entities. There will be more agency because they know that they're expected to pay provisional tax, they're expected to pay different taxes to the government, to SARS, so that SARS aggregates all this money from public entity, money from private entity, and then we can grow our tax income, our tax revenue can grow. The other issue that I think we must address, I'm done with this piece, the piece about how much money we are collecting and all of that. We already know that we collect 800,000 from income tax, personal income tax. We collect 330 from companies tax. We collect 499 or 500 billion from VAT. Let's not look at the salaries. Let's just look at companies tax and VAT. 500 billion plus 330, that's about 800 billion. So if you take that, you make it a percentage of our GDP, which is about 6.7 trillion, 6 trillion 700 billion. So which means about only about 11% of that money, 11% of the GDP is what we are collecting. So if we collect 800 billion from tax on goods, which is VAT, and tax on companies, which is companies tax and business tax, 800 billion versus 6.7 trillion. We make GDP products wise, we make that much. Let's say maybe of the 6.7 trillion, only 1 trillion is non-taxable goods or zero-rated goods, and then you are left with 6 or 5.9 trillion. You should still be collecting more when it comes to 28% tax for companies, and also when it comes to VAT. Obviously, when it comes to companies tax, companies do not get taxed on revenue. They get taxed on the bottom line, which means you have your revenue, your cost of sales, you subtract that, you have your gross profit, you take expenses from your gross profit at the end of at the bottom line of your income statements. That's where you get taxed. Most companies make about 20% margin, 20 to 25, some of them 35% net profit, and then they get taxed on that. Let's say this 6 trillion, 20% of that or 30% of that as net profit is about how much? 6 billion, about let's say 2 trillion. 2 trillion is supposed to get taxed at 20% or 28%. You are looking at something like 28%, that's about 30%. You are looking at something like 300 billion. That's plus or minus what we are currently collecting. Let's go to VAT now. Let's say of that 6.9 trillion, only 6 trillion is taxable. Goods tax, they're taxable at a 15% rate, not at a 0% rate, which means 6 trillion, you must be able to collect. From 6 trillion, you must be able to collect 15%. 15% of 6 trillion, calculate that. We are not collecting enough. Let me do a quick calculation. If it was 10%, you should have been collecting 600 billion already. You should have been collecting 600 billion. So let's look at 6 trillion. And get a 15% of 6 trillion. quickly so that we know that our numbers are right. So you should be collecting about 900 billion. So if you have a GDP of 6.9 trillion, 6.9 trillion GDP, are you listening, guys? 6.9 trillion GDP. You have 6.9 trillion GDP, and on the other side, you're saying that, for example, maybe 1 trillion of that GDP is non-taxable when it comes to VAT, it's zero rated or exempt. And then you are left with close to 5.9, which is, to round it off, is 6 trillion. 6 trillion, you are supposed to tax it at 15% VAT. We must be having that money as income to the government. We are expecting to be at about 900 billion. But we are currently at 499 billion. Currently, with the current GDP, we are not making enough. We are not collecting enough. Somebody out there is selling goods and they're not adding VAT. It's because there is a limit. There are businesses that are not expected to charge VAT. There are businesses that are expected to charge VAT. Many businesses are going without registering for VAT, without paying VAT or collecting VAT. These things, they are the things that are contributing. We should be collecting 900 billion, close to 1 trillion. That's already like 50% of our budget for the country coming from VAT alone. So when I say VAT is important and you guys get angry, you guys are not happy, and I'm talking serious in these videos, I'm not smiling, I'm not budging, I'm saying this is a point that I'm pushing. We should be collecting VAT, but you guys don't take it serious. We are losing almost 500 billion because we only collect 499. Excuse me. You understand, guys? We are only collecting less than what we are supposed to collect. We are not collecting enough, guys. We're not collecting enough. The amount of money that we are collecting, it should be double of what we are collecting. VAT, I'm not saying that VAT must go up by double. I'm just saying efficiently, SARS must be able to collect more. As a country, we should collect more at the same percentage. At 15%, if we are realistic, we should be collecting the right amount. But the way it is right now, it looks like the government is saying that from the 6 trillion that we are making as a GDP, half of that is taxable, half of that is not taxable. But that's not the case. There are more taxable goods than exempt and non-taxable goods. Our country thrives on energy. Energy is not taxable, we understand, but you cannot say that energy and fuel are, that they are half of our GDP. They can't be. And you can't say food is half of our GDP. There are more that we are producing as a country than just food and fuel and other exempt goods. Our country is making way more. Our country should be collecting more tax. So as a result, this is my point of view. We don't have a tax percentage problem. We don't have a tax uncollection problem. We have a lack of capacity. We can't collect what we are supposed to collect, and it's a problem. And I believe in the next 3 to 5 years, we should be equipping SARS with more. Put more departments of SARS, put more special divisions that are going to make SARS efficient so that we can collect more money, we make more money, we collect what we are supposed to collect. If you are a business owner, you don't collect what you are supposed to collect, you are going to collapse, which is what we are seeing with South Africa. We have so much debt, close to 6.2 trillion, close to our GDP. Every year we are spending almost what we are collecting on VAT. What we are collecting on VAT, we are spending that to just finance our debt. Our country is collapsing. Do not get angry. Do not get mad when they say VAT is going up. It's for a good cause. We want to see our country get to a place where we can make more money. We can collect more of what we are supposed to collect. And when we start making more money in terms of GDP, if our GDP grows from 6 trillion or 7 trillion to 10 trillion, we should be collecting close to 1.5 trillion in VAT alone. Forget the other tax, forget the employment tax, forget the company's tax. Only VAT, we should be collecting close to 1.5 if our economy grows and it becomes 10 trillion. we should be collecting more. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the King's Podcast. Until the next time, when we come back with the next episode, I'm going to be sitting with Cleo. We're going to be talking about different social issues. But on this segment, when you see my face alone, we're talking about finances, we're talking about the government, we're talking about politics, things that are causing us as a country to not thrive. Thank you for tuning in. It's your host, Eugene, aka GGGGGG Money. We're out.